sprinkling holy water. In the ancient world, the fish god was a big thing. Now, part of the fish god attire was the fish mitre. You notice here on the screen also another picture of Dagon, the fish god, and other pagan gods in fish attire. They would wear this fish attire, as it were, and part of the symbolic language of it all was the fish head mitre. And as you go now into the papacy, you find something very interesting. If you look at what the high officials of the Catholic Church wear, they wear these funny sort of hats, which are actually fish head mitres, which are exactly the same as come from the ancient pagan world. Nothing's changed. Here we see on the screen pagan-type croziers, supposed to be sort of shepherd staffs, as they were. In the pagan world, they were right through the pagan world. Of course, if you go into the modern Babylon, you find the same croziers are used today. In fact, serpent croziers were commonly carried by bishops and high Catholic officials in the Middle Ages. They had serpents on them. Here we see on the screen a picture of the Assyrian god, one of the Assyrian gods, and you'll notice if you look very closely, in the hand of this Assyrian god is a picture of a pine cone. He's holding a pine cone. Here you'll see another picture of a Babylonian god holding a pine cone in the same way. The idea of this was to keep away the evil spirits. If you go into Egypt, we see the pine cone staff of Osiris. If we go into the Hindu world, the Hindu images carried pine cones. Here we see on the screen a picture of a hand from a pagan sun-worshipping cult. And if you look closely at this hand, you find on the thumb of the hand is what? Is a pine cone. Mexican gods had pine cones, which was a symbol of the sun and rebirth and fertility. But the largest pine cone in the world is actually found in the court of the pine cone at the Vatican. It's an enormous statue of a pine cone. The same imagery that's in the pagan world we find now in modern Babylon, that just as Dr. Alexander Hislop said, right through the whole system. On the screen there's a photograph there of the Pope. If you look very closely at the staff that he is holding, you find beneath the cross of Christ is a pine cone. There's some more photographs there of the pine cone, another Pope and another picture of the pine cone, through the symbolic language and imagery of the Roman system. This is a statue of the Pope here, one of the older popes. It's a bit hard to see, but if you look closely on his chest, you'll notice that there are 3 pine cones. The same as it was in ancient Babylon is the same as it is now in modern Babylon. In the ancient world, they used to carry around their gods on thrones. Their gods were their kings and their queens and their pharaohs. And they would display them and they would carry them around on thrones, as the picture on the screen shows you. And of course, we see in modern Babylon, the Pope gets carried around exactly the same. Not just as a man, but gets carried around as if he were a god. Another point that's interesting, if you look at the screen there, you'll notice some ancient pagan prayer beads. They used to use these in the pagan world, but of course we come into the modern Babylon, we find the same prayer beads are being used. They're called rosary beads in the Catholic system. They were in ancient Babylon, and now we find them in modern Babylon, exactly the same. On the screen there's a photograph there. Take a close look at that photograph. On the tiara of this Babylonian winged god, there is what is known as a fleur-de-lis. It's that little knob thing on top of the picture there. We find this same symbol right through again through the modern Babylonian world. On the picture there is on the screen there's a picture from the Vatican. If you look very closely in the middle of that bit of artwork there is the same symbols of fleur-de-lis right there in the Vatican as well. On the screen there's some more pictures there about the tiara. You know, the Pope wears a triple crowned or a triple mitred tiara. The triple part means that he's ruler of heaven and the earth and the lower regions. But in the ancient world, the ancient pagan gods wore a triple crowned tiara as well. On the screen again there's another symbol there, a photograph of some symbols at least, of ancient pagan sun symbols. If you look closely you'll see these different pagan sun symbols were usually a circle with some sort of shape of a cross in the middle. If you look closely at those sun symbols on the screen and then look at the next picture of the papacy and the Pope with his Mass, it's the exact same sun symbols on the front of the altar of this picture. if you look at the Pope's mitre here very closely, right in the centre, we see the exact same sun symbol on the mitre of the Pope. In the ancient world we saw it. In the modern world of Babylon we see the same thing. Now look very closely at this next picture. This next picture is very interesting. This next picture is a depiction of the pagan kings on an ancient standing stone, and it shows a strip of cloth called a laplet that hangs from the rear of the headgear of the king or the god. Can you notice that little bit of laplet, that bit of cloth that hangs from the back? If you look also very closely at this image, on its hand there is a symbol of the sun, a sun symbol on the hand on this image as well. Now there's a laplet and there's an image of the sun on the hand of this Babylonian god here. Now have a look at these next pictures. On the Pope's mitre and the Pope's tiara are the same laplets, the same bit of cloth that comes off the back as it was on these ancient pagan gods. And also notice a picture on here on the screen of the Pope here. He has his tiara on, he has his laplets coming off the back, but notice on his hand it's the exact same sun symbol that was on that ancient standing stone of the pagan Babylonian god. The exact same imagery, friends, is going right through the system. Here we see another photograph of the fish head mitres. All of those fish head mitres have that same cloth, that laplet that comes off the back of those mitres. Notice also the picture of the Pope on the screen there with his mitre. And on his collar, you'll notice on his collar, there's a symbol there. It's like a cross that's flared out at the ends to make a circle. This same picture is seen in the ancient Babylonian world. Notice also this picture here of this Neo-Assyrian standing stone. This dates from about 824 BC, and it depicts a king. And notice the necklace that he is wearing around his neck. It's the exact same image that we just saw on the Pope's necklace, the Pope's collar. It's the picture of a cross-type image, but the cross flares out at the ends so it can make into a circle. And if we look at the next photographs, we see the exact same image on the Pope and also on this priest as we saw on this ancient pagan king. What about sun discs? You know, when you look at the artwork of the Catholic system, for some reason they always have like this halo or this sun disc behind their head. That's what it is. It's a sun disc. It's not a halo. There's nowhere in the Bible where it talks about the apostles or Jesus or Mary or anybody else walking around with halos over their head. In the ancient world, it was a symbol of the sun god. And we find all the artwork has these halos or these sun discs behind the heads of the so-called saints in Jesus. In the ancient world, pagan solar wheels were a very big thing. And you look at the Catholic system today, and we look in our world today, and the largest solar wheel in the world is in the court of the Vatican. If you look closely at those photographs, you'll see the entire court of the Vatican is one enormous solar wheel. Friends, it's all from pagan origin. It's all from ancient Babylon and has come into the church today, has been so-called Christianized. But friends, that's why the Bible says that this system is called Babylon the Great, because it's a continuation of the same system of Babylon. On the screen there we find an Egyptian obelisk. Of course, in St. Peter's Square, in the middle of that great big solar wheel, we find an obelisk as well. These are all pagan symbols, friends. I mean, I could go on for another hour on all these different symbols. But friends, this system is none other than Babylon the Great. God is identifying to you and I clearer and clearer and clearer evidence that this system is the one that he is identifying and is warning us to stay away from. The sixth point from Revelation chapter 17 is that this system is the mother of harlots. You know, friends, the Roman Catholic Church is the only church that calls herself the mother. She calls herself the Mother Church. The reason why she calls herself the Mother Church is because most of, if not all of, the Protestant denominations broke off from the Roman system, and she calls them her daughters. Disobedient daughters, but they're nevertheless her daughters. She is called the mother. But the Bible calls this system Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots,